The applause was thunderous. Lights spilled across the stage like molten gold, illuminating Alison Krauss as she raised her fiddle. Every note she played, every word she sang felt effortless, almost otherworldly. She wasn't just performing, she was rewriting what music could be. By the time Alison Krauss became a household name, she had amassed 26 Grammy Awards, a record no other woman had claimed. Her voice, delicate yet powerful, had become a standard of excellence. Her fiddle danced like lightning across the strings, quick and precise, a reflection of a talent that seemed untouchable. For years, the world watched in awe. Critics hailed her as the queen of bluegrass, the golden girl of crossover country. Collaborations with icons came naturally, albums succeeded without fail, and her career seemed destined for endless accolades. Behind the curtain, however, a different story was unfolding. First signs were subtle. Fatigue, persistent headaches, a voice that didn't quite respond the way it always had. Initially, fans and even those closest to her assumed Allison needed a break, a strategic pause, a moment to recharge. But the silence stretched, becoming more than a hiatus. Interviews became rare. Stage appearances were delayed. Even her bandmates, who knew her better than anyone, spoke cautiously, measuring their words as though afraid to disturb an unseen storm. "I just kept thinking if I do it now, it won't be as good as it could be next week," she would admit later, reflecting on the growing uncertainty that crept into her daily life. The relentless pace of fame, the expectations, the unyielding pressures of the music industry, they had begun to exact a toll no awards or accolades could erase. Then came the diagnosis, dysphonia, a disorder that struck at the heart of her talent, her voice. For a singer, losing the ability to control the instrument that had defined her life was catastrophic. Every note wavered. Confidence faltered. The stage, once a place of triumph, suddenly felt perilous. Doctors prescribed silence. Shows were canceled, tours postponed, and a world that had only known her brilliance was confronted with her absence. This silence was more than professional. It was deeply personal. The gift that had carried her through decades of performance now felt like a betrayal. Every attempt to sing, every rehearsal, every word uttered was shadowed by fear. The very thing that had brought her joy now threatened to break her spirit. Friends noticed. Colleagues observed. Her laughter grew careful, measured, cautious. Even her music began to bear the weight of longing, for rest, for peace, for a moment to simply breathe. Yet, through the struggle, Allison refused to surrender. Her comeback would not be rushed or superficial. It would be whole, or it would not happen at all. The world watched as Union Station, her faithful collaborators, carried on. Side projects, collaborations, tours, they continued, quietly respecting her struggle, understanding that the thread of Allison's voice was the very heartbeat of their music. Fans reached out online, sharing memories, favorite songs, concert moments. Their devotion never wavered. But for Allison, the road to recovery was solitary, painstaking, and sometimes heartbreaking. Vocal exercises became meditations. Days were structured around silence, patience, and relentless discipline. Small victories, a single note landing perfectly, a fleeting confidence, were savored, each one a flicker of hope in a long night. Other days ended in disappointment, frustration threatening to undo months of progress. Slowly, painfully, the voice began to return, not as a flawless echo of its past, but as something tempered, refined, and resilient. During this period, Allison confronted more than physical hurdles. Isolation pressed in, perfectionism turned inward, and doubts multiplied. Was she still relevant? Would the industry remember her? Could she reclaim her place in a world that moved on quickly, often ruthlessly? Every season away added risk. Every moment of hesitation deepened the fear. Yet she pressed on, quietly, methodically, determined to return on her own terms. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think. Recovery was not merely about regaining her voice. It was a lesson in humility, resilience, and the rediscovery of joy in creation. Songs no longer needed to chase perfection, they needed to honor survival. Collaboration was approached with care, every note, every lyric weighed for its meaning. The music was no longer dictated by deadlines or commercial pressure. It was guided by truth, honesty, and the quiet knowledge that the struggle itself had reshaped her art. Then came the pivotal moment. Allison woke up one morning and realized the fear had loosened its grip. The long wait had ended. The world had moved on, but she had changed too. The voice she wielded was not identical to the one that had defined her youth, yet it was unmistakably hers, forged by adversity, strengthened by patience. She reached out to her bandmates, and together they began a new chapter. Recording sessions were intense, emotional, and profoundly honest. Laughter returned. Worries eased. The first rehearsals felt like a homecoming, a reclamation of the life she had nearly lost. This was not about reclaiming past glory. It was about gratitude, about the music that still needed to be shared, about honoring every fan who had waited, every collaborator who had wondered, every doubter who had speculated. Comeback was complete not through accolades or headlines, but through presence and authenticity. The music spoke for itself, carrying a depth and humanity born from struggle. Fans, old and new, recognized it immediately. The absence had been a crucible, and Allison had emerged with a voice and spirit unbroken. Alison Krauss's story is a testament not just to talent but to perseverance. The journey from silence back to song illustrates the fragility and strength of artists everywhere. Fame and success are fragile constructs, but the will to continue, to fight, to reclaim what is almost lost is indestructible. The return of Alison Krauss is not just a comeback. It is a celebration of survival, of finding joy in creation, and of embracing imperfection as a new form of beauty. Her legacy is not measured merely in Grammys or chart-topping albums, but in courage. She chose the long, hard path, facing uncertainty and fear, emerging not just as the celebrated musician of years past, but as a living testament to resilience. Every note now carries more than melody. It carries story, struggle, victory, and heart. The music industry, always hungry, continues to evolve. New voices emerge, new trends dominate, yet Alison Krauss remains irreplaceable, a touchstone for excellence, a symbol of what can be achieved when talent is paired with unyielding determination. Every performance, every song now carries the added depth of someone who has looked into the void and returned, ready to share her gift, scars, and all. Her story offers hope to anyone who has faced adversity, reminding us that setbacks do not define the end but can instead forge a stronger, richer path forward. To witness Alison Krauss step back into the spotlight is to see artistry and humanity intertwined, a reminder that the greatest victories are often the quietest, most personal ones. Through every trial, every moment of doubt, Alison Krauss's music remained her anchor, and eventually it became her triumph. The voice that had faltered, the hands that had trembled, returned with new power and purpose. The golden run, once threatened, was not just restored. It evolved into something more profound, more enduring, and infinitely more human. Alison Krauss's return is not merely about performance. It is about authenticity, resilience, and rediscovering the joy that first drew her to music. For every fan who waited in silence, for every musician who drew inspiration, for every listener who feared her absence, her story proves that perseverance, patience, and courage can restore not only talent but the soul itself. Her journey is a reminder that music is not just about notes, rhythms, or fame. It is about heart, humanity, and the relentless pursuit of something meaningful. Alison Krauss's voice, now tempered by struggle, sings not just for the audience but for herself, for her journey, for the courage it took to return whole. The world may have anticipated a simple comeback, but what we received was a masterclass in resilience. Her return is not a mere footnote in her career. It is a defining chapter, one that honors the struggles, the silence, and the unwavering spirit of a true artist. Through adversity, Alison Krauss has not only reclaimed her voice but has deepened its resonance, offering a gift that no hiatus or illness could diminish: the music itself.